Welcome to Capitol Preview, a weekly bipartisan discussion with Iowa legislators about the key issues facing our state. Brought to you by Mediacom.
Hi, welcome to another episode of Capitol Preview. My name is Bill Peard. I'm the Executive Vice President of the Iowa Cable and Telecommunications Association. This show is dedicated to the enlightenment of our citizens on things going on at our state capitol, both Republican and Democrat. Our guest today is John Forbes, Democrat from Urbandale, District 40. John, welcome.
Thanks for having me in again.
I'm just going to, I know we got a bunch of questions for you, and I'm just going to start in. The Senate recently passed a huge tax cutting bill, over $1 billion a year from the state budget when fully implemented. The House version is not as drastic. It's around $300 million. What do you think is going to happen on these tax bills?
Well, I think what we'll see probably is a compromise between both the House and the Senate version. The House version, which I actually serve on the subcommittee, there's a 5-member subcommittee on this. We met last week, and we're going to meet again probably after the REC meets on Friday to discuss where we're at. But I think what we're going to see is a compromise between the two chambers. The House bill is probably more in line with what the governor came out with. And so we're hopeful to come up with a bill that will work for all Iowans. I do have some concerns about the bill, and you know, if you're taking anywhere from $300 million a year out of our state budget to over $1 billion, it's going to have a major impact on a lot of the state programs that we provide funding for, especially education, our state Medicaid program, public safety. And so that's my concern. If we're going to take that much money out, how are we going to fill the gaps, and what impact that will have on average daily lives of Iowans here in our state.
Which brings us into our next question, is that we are also facing de-appropriation funds for the current year. So what's going to happen to that effort?
Well, there's a couple bills floating out there that would de-appropriate or take money away from our state agencies between now and the end of June, and that's only about 3.5 months. And so we're working to hopefully reduce that as much as possible. I just heard from some of my colleagues just this morning that with the revenue estimating conference coming out with their new number on Friday, there may be a chance that we may not have to do a de-appropriations bill, possibly, and that's not set in stone yet. But I'm hopeful with better revenue estimates that are going to come in hopefully on Friday that this de-appropriation bill may be able to set on the shelf and not have to move forward on, because it's going to have a huge impact on our state Medicaid program, on a lot of our human services programs here in the state that, again, Iowans really rely on. Absolutely.
The House passed a bill to fight opioid abuse, which is a big discussion item nationwide.
Yes.
What's in the bill? What in the bill, and what are its prospects in the Senate? I'm sorry.
Well, the bill we passed here, I think it was a week or two ago, addresses the issue. We have a huge problem in Iowa and across the country of opioid abuse, and we're seeing more and more deaths from prescription drugs, from opioid sources, and also from heroin. And so this bill will address more of the prescribing end of it from physicians. Doctors tend to, in some cases, overprescribe these medications. You go to your doctor, you have a sprained ankle or a hurt shoulder. Many times doctors will prescribe 100 oxycodone tablets. In many cases, patients will only take maybe 10 or 20 of those pills. And what happens, they set them in their medicine cabinet, and then what happens, somebody else comes along, opens up their medicine cabinet, and they're gone. And they get in the street and they get in the wrong hands. And usually it's our younger individuals that get a hold of them. They take those and then they get hooked on them. Once they get hooked, they find out they can't get the opioids that they want on the street because of availability and cost. So then they move to heroin, which is a much more potent opioid. And that's just a cycle they get into. And unfortunately, what's happening now is that we're seeing more and more people overdosing because they think they're taking heroin, but they're getting fentanyl and carfentanil, which are a much, much more potent drug. And it's killing our young Iowans and people across this country.
So what's the, so do they take it for the high, or what's the outcome? Or what's their outcome?
Well, the reason I think they get a high from it, and they feel like they're in a different state of mind.
Okay.
And that's why, they get into a situation where they get so hooked on this stuff, they don't take it now for the pleasure anymore. They take it because if they don't have the drug, they feel terrible. And that's part of the craving they have. So,
got it.
But the bill also addresses prescribing here in the state of Iowa. By end of 2019, doctors will have to now prescribe all medications electronically. So when you go to your doctor, starting in 2020, they're not going to hand you a piece of paper when you walk out of your office. They're going to electronically submit that prescription to the pharmacy of your choice. There are some exceptions to that in the bill for certain cases, but the vast majority of all prescriptions will be electronically submitted, and that will reduce the amount of fraud that occurs with prescription, the actual piece of paper. Many patients take that and they alter the quantity of the drug, or sometimes they'll try to wash the paper and write a whole different drug on that new prescription. So we think that will help. It also requires physicians to check with the PMP, or the Prescription Monitoring Program, when they prescribe an opioid product for a patient. Because we sometimes see patients that doctor shop and go to multiple physicians to try to get these medications, and then they also try to go to multiple pharmacies to try to get caught. This monitoring system will catch that, and we will be able to flag those people in the system, so we'll be able to not have those medications available to them.
John, the other thing is the Iowa Medicaid system is a mess. What is the legislature doing about that, and are there any proposals moving forward?
Well, as you know, we went to a managed Medicaid system here in 2016. I think it was implemented in April of 2016. And since we've been in the program almost 2 years now, we've had a lot of problems. I was somewhat optimistic at first. You know, I said, let's give it a try. If we can save money for the state of Iowa, and we can increase the quality of care for Iowans, that's a win-win. Well, what's happened is it's ended up costing us more money, because these MCOs, managed care organizations, are coming back to the state and asking for more money because they say they're losing millions of dollars. And then we're seeing patient care, quality of care, especially in a long-term care disability population, having major problems accessing quality of care and making sure that they're taken well care of. So I introduced a bill earlier this session that would basically take us back to our old system of Medicaid that I thought was running very well. Iowa was considered one of the best run Medicaid systems here in the state of Iowa. Unfortunately, that bill has not gone anywhere. With the control of the Republicans in both chambers, they want to move forward with what we have in place right now. And I know all of us are getting emails and calls from our constituents all around the state telling us that we need to make changes. So I'm hopeful that before we adjourn next month, we can have a bill that will somehow make our state Medicaid system better. But as of now, I don't see us probably going back to our old system.
In a bipartisan vote, the Iowa Senate passed a ban on all traffic cameras. What are the prospects of this happening in the Iowa House, and how do you feel about it?
Well, there's two bills in both chambers right now. One would do the all-out ban, and the other would put more restrictions on cities if they're going to put automated traffic enforcement cameras in their communities or in county areas. Right now, personally, I don't really like automated traffic cameras. I feel as though police should be the people that will catch people if they're speeding. But the bill that would put more limits on how cities and counties can use it, I think has a lot of merit. And right now we're studying that in the House. I serve as ranking person on transportation in the House, so we're right now in the process of going through that bill and determining whether that should come to the floor for debate. The all-out ban, I'm not sure if there's votes in the House to pass that. I know it did pass the Senate just recently, so we'll have to see what happens.
So I got to ask the question, and I certainly don't want to put you on the spot. Yeah. So is it a safety issue or a revenue issue?
Well, I think a lot of cities I've been hearing from, if it goes away, it's going to have a huge impact on their city budgets. You know, some cities are bringing in revenue of $300,000 to $500,000 a year. So if those go away, that's going to leave a huge gap in budget. On the safety side, you know, I hear people say, well, it does reduce accident rates at intersections where they have the cameras, or where on certain roads where they have cameras. I know City of Des Moines on Interstate 235, if you're going eastbound around 42nd Street, you're going to see a camera there. They say that's very hard to police that area because of the huge traffic volume, and having police officers on that road stopping people, it gets very dangerous. So I can see both sides of the argument, but we'll have to work through the process as a capital, but I think you will see us pass one of those two bills before we adjourn next month.
Good. The Senate passed a bill essentially gutting the energy efficiency programs and are putting the solar industry in jeopardy. What's your position on that bill?
Well, you know, I'm always a big believer in renewable energy and making sure that we have more of that provided for our state. You know,
and I know on your pharmacy that you have.
Yes, I've invested in that, and most of 90% of the electricity that is generated at my pharmacy is from my solar panels on my roof. So whenever we can incentivize people to be able to move in that direction, I think that's positive, because it reduces the amount of electrical usage that's generated from coal and other sources, which is leading to our greenhouse gas issue here in the state of Iowa and across the globe. This bill would limit the availability of people being able to be incentivized to look at solar and programs like that. It also has a negative impact on our energy efficiency programs here in the state of Iowa. Right now, Mid-American pays for insulation if you want to insulate your home to reduce your energy costs. Windows and things like that. They have a buyback on appliances. If you want to upgrade to, say, a new refrigerator that's more energy efficient, right now they'll pay you $50 to get that out of your house. And they'll even come and pick it up for you too. So this bill would greatly reduce that amount of programs that Iowans can utilize to reduce energy costs in their home, which in turn is going to reduce energy usage, and that it'll, again, give the power companies less incentive to be able to build new power plants, which cost millions and millions of dollars, which in turn increase rates here in the state of Iowa.
Absolutely. We had time for just one more quick question, so we're going to have to go through it pretty quick. In 2013, the legislature passed a large commercial property tax rollback, and the legislature promised to provide funding to those cities to make up the loss of those property taxes. Now it appears that the legislature is about to end the so-called backfill to local governments, which means higher property tax. What are your comments on that?
Well, I've had a lot of discussion with this with my city manager in Urbandale and the mayor, and they're very concerned about impact if this goes away. In 2013, we passed this bill that basically we determined that our property taxes on our commercial properties were too high. So this basically backfill cities so they can lower property taxes to commercial to hopefully bring in more business. Unfortunately, now we're hitting a budget crisis here in the state of Iowa, and there's talk now of phasing out that. And I know there's going to be a bill introduced in the House, Ways and Means, I believe, that's going to phase that out over 3 years. So we're going to have to discuss that and see what impact, first of all, that's going to have on cities, and probably what would happen is it's going to increase property taxes citizens pay across the state of Iowa.
Well, again, thank you for joining us here this afternoon on Capitol Preview. Our guest has been Representative John Forbes, Democrat from Urbandale, District 40. Thank you, John.
All right, thanks for having me in again.